So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. After you've had rooftop solar for a year or two and you look up at your panels, you're going to wonder, should I clean those solar panels? They look a little bit dirty. Now, that question occurred to me a few weeks ago. Gee, my solar panels look dirty. It's time for a cleaning. So I'll tell you about the logic and some of the experiences that I've had over the years with panel cleaning. Now, there's lots of misinformation about panel cleaning on the internet. So we're going to try to answer the how often question mathematically. If you have monitoring, you can kind of figure it out. And we're going to answer the how to clean question based on experience and doing a lot of research, and talk especially about how not to clean your solar panels. These comments are based on experience, research, and safety, and we've had a lot of experience with that. Now, here's the reality. Even if your brand new solar panels or freshly cleaned solar panels have been up there for only about a week, when you look at them in most places around the world, they're going to look a little bit dirty right away. Mine looked really dirty from the ground. I'm looking at them from an oblique angle. But the looks can be really deceiving. The panels usually look much dirtier when looking from the ground because you're just seeing the reflection of the dirt that's diverting the sun's rays. Whereas when you look at it straight on, they may not be so bad. Surprisingly, the photons can get through a lot of that dirt. So let's start about a little bit of understanding with how panels get dirty to begin with. Now, it's almost always from wind-blown dust. So dusty areas around farms, dirt roads, urban areas, they're going to be bad. You're going to also get a lot of pollen accumulation in the spring. Here in California, the panels have this green sheen on them by about April or May. That's really bad. Now, also, there may be issues with birds if you have trees around. It's usually not too bad unless your last name is Hitchcock and you live in Bodega Bay. So we'll take a look and see mathematically what happens when the panels get dirty. Here's a graph of that. This is just annualized output, and you can see how it kind of, bounces up and down, but it generally goes down as panels get dirty and dirtier. That's the annual kilowatt hour output. So what happens? That output goes down. You can easily see it on your monitoring. Now, it's reasonable to expect some variations month by month over the years based on weather. If it's been really cloudy, you're going to have lower output. Ironically, if it's been really hot, the output's a little bit lower. And if you get some heavy rains, and especially in areas around the country, around the world where you get regular rains, after a very heavy rain, the panels are going to get cleaned up. So that's on top of the expected gradual efficiency loss of the system and of the panels. You may see degradation of 1/4 to 0.5% a year. Not that big. So the amount of output that you lose really depends on the distribution and the amount of dirt. So usually solar panels are kind of evenly soiled. There's a fine layer of dust everywhere. But what happens is this kind of gloppy mud tends to accumulate on panels that have slopes, low slopes. And I've seen situations on flat roofs and even on slope roofs where at the very bottom edges or between the solar panels, you actually may get weeds and moss if the panels and the roof hasn't been cleaned in a long time. The reason why you get this accumulation of more dirt towards the bottom of the panel is because dew collects on the panels at night. That's a little bit of humidity in the air. The panels are very, very cold. The dew condenses onto the glass, and that dew kind of drips down the panel. It kind of cleans the top area, but the dew kind of dries up at the bottom, and it's brought that dirt down to the lower parts of the panels. Now, that dirt accumulation can be very bad when concentrated along the lower edges of the solar panels, that bottom row of cells, because that row of cells can get knocked out. The output can go way, way down, more than 50%. And that's going to affect the output of the entire panel. And if you don't have optimization, it could knock out significantly reduce the output of that entire string of panels. So what you might see is the newest solar panels have split cells. They're bigger, and instead of using square cells, they use rectangular cells. They're actually just square cells cut in half. And that minimizes the output degradation that you're going to see from dirt accumulation on panels. It's kind of an interesting innovation. It also raises up the voltage and it improves the efficiency. So depending on the type of system you have, an ordinary string inverter with string optimization, DC optimizers where you're optimizing every individual solar panel, or microinverters where you're also optimizing every single solar panel, you're going to see different effects from this kind of dirt and soiling. String inverters are typically worse because if one panel gets very dirty, it's going to knock out that string. Microinverters and DC optimizers can avoid that degradation because it can bypass or bump up the output of that weak panel without affecting the whole string. So just kind of backing up, what happens when it's dry and dusty? Panels get really dirty. What happens during a hard rain? Well, that hard rain will pretty effectively clean off those panels. A light rain is not going to really do it. You really need a downpour. And then those panels are going to be pretty thoroughly cleaned, except for, when we kind of go up there after a good rainstorm, there's sometimes stubborn dirt at the bottom of the panel. And also, if you have sap accumulating, the water doesn't really take that off, and that's something that's going to have to be scrubbed off. All right, so when we kind of look at how often you should clean your solar panels, I like to look at it mathematically, taking into account the economic factors. So here are some of the circumstances where it's most valuable economically to clean your solar panels. Locations where it doesn't rain regularly, dry climates, California, the desert. Places where it's very sunny, because you're going to lose even more energy in sunny places than if it's not so sunny. Bigger systems, because it's more cost effective to clean big solar panel arrays, certainly utility scale solar, big commercial arrays. It's more cost effective to clean those than, getting a crew of 1 or 2 guys in a truck and coming out to your house. So it's bigger systems, more cost effective, makes more sense. Now, it depends on the orientation and the slope of your panels, particularly if you have low tilt angles. You're going to get more dirt accumulation. Really bad dirt accumulation on flat panels or panels that are maybe only 1 or 2 degrees slope. Now, it's nice because you can get a lot of panels on a flat roof, but if you don't tilt them by at least 5%, you're going to get more soiling because the mud doesn't run off in the rain. It's generally better to clean the panels when you have low labor costs in your area because it's going to be less expensive to clean those panels. So you can kind of crunch through some of these economics on the energy savings and the cleaning costs to see if it makes sense. How often should you clean your panels? Every 2 or 3 years, or maybe every 5 years, or maybe only 10 years. So the internet's a great thing. Lots and lots of good information on there. But there's also a lot of bad advice out there. And when I kind of just did a generalized search and when and how to clean solar panels, I found that there's a lot of bad conventional wisdom for cleaning solar panels. Clean Technica says, don't clean your panels. Well, that's not a good generalization. If your panels are very dirty, it might make sense to clean them, and we'll talk about how to do that. Several websites recommend cleaning your panels once or twice a year. That's crazy. Maybe if you're OCD, you want to make sure those panels are clean, but the cost of cleaning the panels twice a year can almost guarantee it's not going to be worth it in terms of the added electricity savings you're going to achieve. Some places say use tap water. Well, watch out, because in most places around the country, the minerals in tap water, it's hard water, those minerals will precipitate out when the water dries and can stain your panels. You kind of get an idea about that. When you drive your car, you park your car in a parking lot, or you park your car in your driveway, and there's a water sprinkler there, and the sides of the car get sprinkled with that water, tap water, coming from a municipal supply. That water dries, precipitates out, and you get this white dots and white films. You don't want that on your solar panels. Energy Matters, another site, said clean the panels from the ground using a hose. I've never encountered a system that could be cleaned effectively from the ground with the hose. First of all, the tap water in that hose has minerals that will stain your panels when that water dries. And I've also seen situations, or heard about them, I haven't seen them, where on a really hot day, you spray the really hot glass panels with really cool water, and you can actually conceivably shatter that panel. I haven't seen it, but it's possible. Panels have tempered glass. They're pretty durable, but it actually happened to my car once when I was washing the car, and the tempered glass on the windshield cracked. Finally, Google did a study. It's always good. Google's study is pretty close to reality. If the panels are flat, clean regularly. If the panels are tilted, don't bother. I totally agree about the flat panels, but if the panels are tilted, you should kind of run the numbers, look at your monitoring, and see if it makes sense. Okay, here's a video of panel cleaning that we recently did, and I'm going to give you advice as a solar and battery storage contractor. So we've been cleaning panels on and off since 2001. Candidly, we lose money when we clean the solar panels because we do everything according to the OSHA regulations. We have trained people. We have workers' comp. It's expensive. And so our costs to clean the panels are more than what you can get if you just kind of, do a Google search and find the local solar panel cleaner. So we recommend finding local solar panel cleaning companies, and the video that you see above comes from one of the projects that one of those contractors did. They did a terrific job, and they just specialize in panel cleaning. They had the exact right tools. Now, after almost 25 years of installing and cleaning solar panels, here's what I've seen that takes place in California. Here's what's realistic if you're in California, and it applies to most of the country. After about 5 years, and this also applies to the East Coast because we've done a lot of installations over there. After about 5 years, unclean solar panels are very dirty at the bottom edges with caked on dirt. So rain hasn't managed to rinse that off. All solar panels tend to be cleaner in the top half, and that's this dew effect that we talked about. Low-sloped panels, 1 or 2 degrees, very dirty at the bottom edges, and there's often a really heavy, thick film of soil and mud on a lot of the panel. And as I mentioned, I've seen moss and grass growing up on top of flat panels. Now, in rainy climates like you have on the East Coast, you get heavy rains pretty much throughout the year, which is really good. So that'll rinse off, if it's a heavy rain, that'll rinse off a lot of the pollen that accumulates, a lot of the dust, but it's not going to get rid of that really heavy sap. So you're still going to need to do a cleaning occasionally. So when you think you should clean your solar panels, take a look at your monitoring. Look at the actual data. So that's what I did recently. When my system was new in the first year, it generated 18,880 kilowatt hours. It's like a 12 or 13 kilowatt system. Now, by the 5th year, the output was 17,150 kilowatt hours. So the output went down over 5 years by about 9%. That's pretty typical considering the average soiling that accumulates and the relatively minor output decline that you're going to see in the panels in the system. We did have a lot of heavy rains, so they did get cleaned, and I did clean the panels thoroughly once in about the 3rd year. So, my results from looking at the monitoring data before the cleaning, so I looked at the daily output before the cleaning, and then I looked at the daily output after the cleaning. And during this week, the weather was totally clear and the temperatures were about the same. Got to watch out because when it gets hotter, the output of the system goes down. When it's cooler, ironically in the winter, you can typically get some pretty good output. So when I looked at my output after the cleaning, the output went up by about 13% from when the panels were dirty in the few days to the few days after the panels were cleaned. So hooray. So I saved 13% by cleaning the panels. But then you got to realize the panels are pretty quickly going to become 4% or so soiled again. So it's reasonable after a cleaning. You got dirty panels. My panels were 13%. Maybe your panels are 15% soiled. You could see an output increase of 5 to 10% over a year. And I'm not saying it's going to be 13% or 15% because the panels are going to get dirty again. And you're just going to have to live with the fact that the panels are going to be a little bit dirty. If you're OCD, maybe your solar panels aren't for you because you're going to go crazy cleaning them every week. But even under that circumstance, if I assume that the panels are going to be about 4% soiled again, and I'm going to save in the range of 5 to 10%. In my case, at 5%, I'm going to generate an extra 900 kilowatt hours a year. And at 50 cents a kilowatt hour, which is kind of the average electric rate here in California, I'm going to save $450 a year. That sounds pretty good. But cleaning my 46 solar panels, I have 40 on the main roof, and then I had 6 on the side roof. It was $10 a solar panel. So I spent $460 cash to clean the panels. And I'm going to save $450 at the low end. I'm sure I'm going to save a little bit more because I want to be conservative. So I'm definitely going to break even in the first year. I'm going to save more in subsequent years, and I'm going to continue to save. Generally, I will also save more because as electricity rates go up, the value of that energy that your solar panels also increases. So that was my example, but let's do a more generalized evaluation. So run through some assumptions. We're assuming that you have an 8,000 watt system, pretty typical, 20 solar panels, each of about 400 watts. And we're going to look at 2 different scenarios for electric rates. 25 cents a kilowatt hour, which is typical in a lot of the country. 50 cents a kilowatt hour on the average, more common in expensive areas, parts of California and Hawaii or even more. And then when we looked at different scenarios of 4%, generally very clean panels, somewhat dirty, 8%, and extremely dirty, 15%. I was kind of more on the extreme side. And so keep in mind that we consider typical solar panels to have an average over the year of about 4% soiling. When we do our estimates for system output and energy savings, we assume that the panels are not going to stay perfectly clean. That's not really relevant. So we want to make sure that our customers get a realistic estimate of the output. So we're assuming that there's always a little bit of soiling. So how much will you save under these different scenarios? Well, the biggest differences are if you have high electric rates, you're going to save more. So you save twice as much energy from cleaning if your rates are 50 cents a kilowatt hour than if your rates are 25 cents a kilowatt hour. And you're also going to save much more if your panels are really dirty. So a lot of this is pretty intuitive. And also, you're going to save more the larger your system is because it's more cost effective to clean a larger solar array. The cleaning service that I use charges a flat $10 a panel. A lot of other services may charge $100 to roll their truck or have somebody come out, and then they may charge $7 or $8 per panel. So there's all kinds of variations. So get some quotes and find out what you think makes sense. So that's what works for residential. It's kind of interesting, but in general, you'll save more when you have high electric rates, when you have really dirty solar panels, and when you have larger systems. Now, for commercial systems, the same considerations apply. You may want to crunch the numbers even more, but the thing is you really need a professional company that can clean solar panels in very, very large volumes. You can't sit there and clean them with a brush and a squeegee. It'll take forever. So a lot of these commercial solar panel cleaning companies have special vehicles that will actually do the cleaning using deionized water, so there's no minerals. And even on utility scale systems, they need to clean. They have special trucks with deionized water and brushes, kind of like a moving car wash. So good options. But now that kind of rolls into how should you clean your solar panels. So once again, there's conflicting and often incorrect advice. Basic points, this is always the case. Safety first. Be careful on the roof. Never walk on the panels. And if you can in some way tie into a roof harness with a proper roof anchor, that's a good idea. Turn your solar and the battery system off because otherwise there might be some live wires on the roof. And if you have a battery system, make sure that not only do you turn the main power off, but you have to turn the shutoff system off so that the battery doesn't kick in. That would still result in live wires on the roof. Now, remember, solar panels use tempered glass. It's a very hard surface, very difficult to scratch the glass. It's just like a window. That's why they don't put plexiglass on windows for solar panels, because that gets really scratched. But glass stays really good. So it's okay to use a brush, scrub it a little bit. The only times that you don't want to do that, if you have some special solar panels that have what's called an anti-reflection coating that's just on the outside of the glass. So it's not part of the glass. It's on the outside of the glass. And I remember some companies that really promoted those very heavily, but what happened is after a few years, those anti-reflective coatings discolored and you lost a few points of efficiency. And those coatings generally are no longer used, specifically because they don't last for the lifetime of a solar panel. Very important to use deionized water, which you can get. It's kind of like distilled water, but it's deionized. There's a special deionization process with a filter and a detergent solution. But for most homeowners, you're not going to have deionized water. So you can still use a detergent solution. There's one caveat. We'll get to that in a sec. What the detergent does, first, it's a surfactant. So the little dirt pack particles get suspended in the water so they wash away. So it kind of catches them and washes them away. Second, the detergent dissolves the mineral deposits. So you don't end up with water that's going to actually precipitate out these white minerals, calcium, whatever. Don't use regular soap. Typically what we recommend is use the solution that you use for washing your car. It's a fairly gentle detergent, and it does a pretty good job. Now, here's what you do. If you don't have deionized water, tap water from the hose is okay. Just remember that if you have a lot of that tap water left on the panels after you're done, that tap water is going to precipitate out and you're going to see little white dots. Not a good idea. So what I recommend is wet the panels with water and detergent, scrub them with a brush or a squeegee, hose off the soap and the dirt, and now what you have is just basically clean, hard water on the panels. And squeegee that extra water off if you have a squeegee so that the minerals don't accumulate. Or if you don't have a squeegee, I suggest another very gentle soap wash and then a very light rinse. So what that's going to do is you're going to leave some detergent film on the panels and you're not going to get so many little white dots. It's something to manage. Here's what you should never do. Never just hose the panels off without some kind of detergent. That hard water will leave calcified white spots on the glass, which are almost impossible to remove. One of our customers once ruined a set of really nice solar panels with cleaning with a hose. I remember got an email saying, hey, this is great. I'm in Fresno. It's really hot. I'm hosing my panels off and I noticed the output went up and it's great. The reason why the output went up is because the panels were cooler. And cooler solar panels operate more efficiently. Then what happened, after a few of these cleanings, the minerals precipitated and his panels had this white film on there that was absolutely impossible to remove. We tried everything, sodium phosphate, everything. We just couldn't get it off. So just be careful. Make sure that you don't allow a lot of that hard water to accumulate and dry in the panels. Okay, so some basic, simple summary advice. In dry areas like California, the desert, whatever, sunny climates, if you have big systems over 5 kilowatts where the electricity is expensive, you should consider cleaning your solar panels about every few years. And the time to clean them, at least here in California, is I would always clean them once during the late spring or very early summer. You want to wait until most of the pollen's off. So you get a lot of tree pollen, a lot of flower pollen. So once all the trees have heavy leaves, you're not looking at a lot of pollen in the air. That's a good time to clean them. And you're going to notice that the panels have this green sheen on them. Very small systems may not be worth the third-party cleaning expense. You can clean them yourself, but hiring a cleaning company to clean like a 3 kilowatt system, it's going to cost a lot of money, unless your panels are filthy. If you're in a very rainy climate where you get regular heavy rains, you don't want to really bother cleaning your panels unless they're flat, which the rains may not always going to get all that mud off, and dirty. And it kind of reminds me what my wife once said about me. I'm white and dirty, so you want to clean your panels if they're flat and dirty. In Florida, you have cheap electricity and very regular rains. You may not need to clean them as often as in California, especially not smaller arrays. Now, regardless of the system you have, it's probably worth a cleaning every 5 to 10 years. You're going to go up there and you're going to see some really messy dirt at the bottom edges of the panels, and you're going to want to scrub that off. That's going to improve your efficiency. And you can check your monitoring. You can see that, hey, when the system was new, it put out 10,000 kilowatt hours a year, and now it's putting out 8,000 kilowatt hours a year. Don't blame the equipment. Take a look and see how dirty the panels are. Now, if you're going to do the cleaning yourself, remember the sign, slippery when wet. That's even more important on the roof. The roof is going to be slippery. Tile roofs are really, really tough. If you have a standing seam roof, it's almost impossible. So follow proper safety procedures. If you can, tie yourself in. Make sure that you've got the right shoes on because it's going to be slippery. Also, do not simply hose off your panels. And if you do use regular tap water, use a light detergent solution and gently rinse the panels when you're done. All right. That's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show. Thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. And if you missed any of today's show, you can always go to our website at energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.